Welcome to Sparking Success with Aaron Opalewski. Aaron brings you conversations that spark innovation, cultivate leadership skills, and pave the way for your business success. In each episode, we delve into the dynamic world of business and leadership, exploring strategies, insights, and success stories that fuel your professional journey.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sparking Success. Today, we have my good friend, Josh Kosnick, on the podcast with us. Josh is a business coach, Kairos Consulting, coaching and consulting. He is the host of the Spartan Leadership Podcast and also an EOS implementer. And I'm sure we'll get into it, but we were talking a little bit before, and he called himself, I like this, a hope dealer. And I think that what we know for sure is a lot of people in business and in life right now are going through some adversity, some tough times. And Josh has got an amazing story. I've heard it multiple times, but I'm going to have him share some on that today. And I think it's just, he's got a message out there that resonates with people right now. What I would say is a way that you can look your adversity straight on and figure out how you can conquer it, come better from it. And, we're both, people of faith. So I think really have God lead us in the direction that he wants us to go, moving forward. But that all starts with taking action. So Josh, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on today, man.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. And anytime you and I get to spend time together, it's an honor. And I love chopping it up with you. So let's get it. Let's have a big impact today.
Yeah, I figured we'd start with, we both were, honored with the opportunity to be on the Mental Toughness Forum that just launched last week and was a huge success. I'm sure you talked to Ben a little bit. I was texting with him yesterday, and as expected, everyone did great, but I enjoyed hearing your conversation and your story. And I think it just resonates again with what's going on in the world right now. Like, what's for certain is we're all going to deal with adversity in life. Things are going to come up. And so if you wouldn't mind, I don't want to make you repeat the whole thing that you went through in the Mental Toughness Forum, but maybe give us a brief summary of that. And if someone hasn't picked up that recording, I believe it's still available. And it's a quick plug for Ben and his event to go grab that recording if you didn't get a chance to listen to those yet.
Yeah, there's 40 awesome people, including you and I, that gave great testimonies on mental toughness. So I would second that. Go get on it and listen to those short stories. It's really kind of like TED Talks, right? Real short and to the point, and you could get a lot of value from. But my story, I wanted to be vulnerable with everyone instead of just thinking like, okay, we're on the Mental Toughness Forum and all these people got it figured out and they're all successful. How do I get to be like them? My story was 3 years ago, I could have portrayed that image. I was on the mountaintop and I had climbed for 17 years in the financial advisory world and was a financial advisor, sold that business sold my book of business when I was asked to succeed my father. And it was a mountaintop moment, both to send him off into retirement. I was chosen over many qualified candidates. There's this fear of nepotism from the corporate side. So I had to make myself undeniable that I was the right choice across the country, this big Fortune 100 company that I was representing. And we owned the book of business within that, but there's an opportunity that they could terminate me if anything went wrong or if I wasn't doing the job. I was doing the job, doing great. We're growing 30% a year, recruiting 40 to 50 advisors, developing them into prosperity. Everything's going. And I say everything loosely because there's always issues in business. And that's some of the things that we help, that I now help business owners fix. But nothing major to the point where like, oh my gosh, I have this fear of termination. And
Sure.
So we're doing, for a small market, we're out of Madison, Wisconsin. We're competing with the big boys. We were beating Atlanta. We were beating LA, some of the Texas cities. I mean, big cities, Phoenix, like we're smoking them out of this little old Madison, Wisconsin, so including Detroit, we were smoking them too. So, we're having a lot of success. And June 16, 2021 rolls around and I get this call from an executive VP. I meet him over at the Marriott. And as soon as my butt hits the chair, he's like, Josh, no easy way to say this. You're no longer a managing partner. We're moving in a different direction. And so I go from the mountaintop to the pit of despair in an instant. And so many questions going through my head. This is a company I've been around since I was 9 months old. Their annual meeting, I had affectionately dubbed my family reunion. I go there every summer to Milwaukee to the corporate offices and spend time with people that I've known, majority of my life, if not my whole life. And that was taken away from me in an instant. So a month later, that was supposed to happen. That was going to be the first one that I hadn't attended in 40 years. And I didn't even share that on the mental toughness forum. So like between being stabbed in the back, stabbed in the front, the betrayal, the shame, the guilt, all the different stuff that goes along with it. And most of all, as a leader, I had 250 people that were looking to me, and they were fearful. They were uncertain. And actually, a lot of my thoughts went to them because I cared deeply about my people. And so I'm in this spot where, I go home that morning and my wife meets me at the door because it was really odd for me to be home. And she just saw the look on my face, and I'm like, I'm done. And she's like, what? And I was like, I'm done. I couldn't utter words really. And she's like, what are we going to do? And I was like, it's not the question right now. And what she was asking, like, her life just changed in an instant as well, because that's all we had known. But also she's a stay-at-home mom of 4 at that time. Now she's got her master's degree in nutrition and doing her own thing. But like, what are we going to do financially? I can imagine all the questions going through her head as well. It's like, are we going to have to move? Are the kids going to have to go to a different school because they're in private school? Like, she didn't know that, like, I had set us up very well financially. She didn't know that the buyout was going to come, all the different stuff, because I handled all that. So I just imagine her fear and uncertainty in that moment. But she was so awesome. Like, I took my, custom fancy suit off, and I immediately, I'm getting texts and calls of people telling me how much my leadership has meant to them, and that they got my back and all this different stuff. And every message that would come in, I just break down. And so I went down to the basement. I'm literally curled up in the fetal position, just bawling. And so it's just an interesting moment in dichotomy to go from that mountaintop where you think you have the world by the balls, and just all of a sudden that's just ripped away from you. Every tradition, your position, your title, everything you've ever known, just gone, except for my family. Right? And that's really my faith in God. And as I said on the mental toughness forum, like, I learned that that's all I needed in that moment. As much as everything hurt, as much as everything was taken away, like, I knew, like, I had her support, and I prayed. I was like, I even said, I think even whether it was that day or shortly thereafter, I was like, man, God, you must have some big plan, something special to put me through this. And I realized a couple things with that I probably didn't share in mental toughness forum that I'll share with your audience is, the age-old adage of you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. My plan was to run it for 20 years, sell it at age 56, and then figure out what my next act was. But I realized that I knew, and I know the Bible well enough to know that having any idols above God is wrong. And a lot of times we think of that as other gods. But what a lot of people don't realize is that idols can be anything other than God. Meaning, an idol could be your spouse, where you're putting her above God. An idol could be your children, where you're putting your children above God. An idol can be your position, your title, your company, your money, a trophy or championship. Like, literally anything that you place more importance above God is an idol in our life. And I now look back with hindsight and say, I put my position, my ambition, the company that I represented, all those things above God. And it was a big slap down from him to course correct, right? To say, this is the way. And so he did have big plans for me, and now I'm, thriving again and climbing that mountain again. But that came through a lot of prayer and reflection and deep despair and overcoming all those emotions in the process to be able to get to a spot where I can talk about this like we are today.
I was, to share a quick story. So I was putting we have 2 girls, and I was putting our older one to bed, and, she was half asleep, but like us to stay in there until she goes, fully out. So once she went down and she's, working on going fully out for the night, I popped in my headphones and I listened to your talk, and I knew the story. I've heard you tell the story a couple times, but you mentioned something about one of your kids asking why you had tears in your eyes, or why your eyes were wet, or something along the lines of that. And it just hit me in a different way. Like, it's like, man, like, those little eyes are always watching us, and that's an extreme moment. And, you had some choices to make on how you're going to show up for them in this really, what was an adverse and tough time. But it just stood out to me, and I'm sitting there, I'm right next to my daughter, and I'm just like, man, what a great reminder. And this is something I try and be intentional about and think about, but I feel like I fall short on, at the same time. I'm like, just like, man, like, what's your tone? Like, you're at home, you're on this call, like, what's your tone? Like, how you handle on that after the fact? Like, their eyes are just always watching, and that just really hit me. So I thought that was cool that you shared that, and just, it was a great reminder for me.
They're always watching. I posted something this morning because we had a small fire in the kitchen last night. Oh. Thankfully, it wasn't, it didn't escalate, right? So I'm in the living room.
It's good.
And all of a sudden, my oldest started screaming, like, "Mom, Dad!" Like, started like yelling loud, like something was wrong. My third born, because of her tone, has my third born has some anxiety, and she immediately freaks out. And I look out there and I see the fire on the stove. And what happened was Jenna accidentally lit the wrong burner, and we have farm fresh eggs, so I bring those home and they sit usually on the counter. They happen to be on the back of the stove, and she lit the wrong burner and those caught on fire. And she had turned her back to go to the sink, and that's when Ella noticed and started yelling. And so I calmly went out there and got some mitts on and actually escorted the carton to the sink, which was right behind us. Didn't have to bust out the fire extinguisher, which was nearby, but that would have been a hell of a mess to clean up. And it didn't escalate further than that. But I made the post about, like, calm as a superpower, and like how you react in things is all, whether it's your kids or the people that you lead, is super telling. And so I remained calm in that situation, because had I freaked out, had I started running around like a chicken with my head cut off, my kids, or especially the one with anxiety, would have freaked out even more. And so it was just me going over there, noticing that it was still controllable, and just calmly taking care of the problem.
And that's really well said. And I mean, I think that's, for me personally, probably why that stood out the other night too, or why, like, maybe I even heard you say that before, but it hit me, it grabbed me in that moment, because it's something I feel like I'm really working on, right now. And I've come a long way, but man, do I fall short on it a lot too, in regards to just how I handle situations. And, we're in a stage where we have expanded a lot. We added 4 companies to the portfolio last year, and I've shut down all my travel outside of direct business for this year to focus on really being there for those operators and just like working on building what we've put together. Execution's everything. At the end of the day, you can put stuff together, but you got to go execute. But I find myself really being stretched on my patience, my tone. I find myself to be very mentally tough, right? But it's just like, I'm getting challenged in this way a lot. So just great reminders. And I think that's a perfect word for it. Just like, hey, like, there's a power in how you can bring a calmness to a situation.
Yeah, well, give yourself a little patience and credit as well. Most people don't start one company a year, let alone adding 4 to the portfolio. So give yourself a little bit of grace there as well, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. And it's really a testament to, like, we have a great group, but, there's just a lot going on. And, as that's happening, I think you got to evaluate this stuff. It's definitely an area that I know I'm way far along compared to where I was, but it's like, man, the more we expand, the more I realize, like, you got to keep working at this. Like, you got to be intentional about this every day. Similar to, I think, our our fitness or our faith or our relationships. Like, it's not like you just read the Bible once or go on one date with your wife, or, these are ongoing things that you got to work on. And as things evolve, you got to get better. So, or, you want your relationships to develop. So I don't know, just thanks for sharing that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, very, very welcome. Good points.
So let me ask you a question, because you are, you're spending a lot of time coaching, consulting with business owners and leadership teams. What's the number one thing, and I just in general, like what do you think is the number one thing that you see business owners working on right now? It could be like that's working for them or that they're struggling with. Just like, what's the number one topic of conversation when you come into a conversation with a business owner or a team?
So it's interesting. There's really actually two. So, and I don't know that it's always been this way. It may have, but so my 20 years of experience, this has been a pretty common theme. But so the two things are human development and systems and processes. And you usually struggle with one of those two areas, and some people struggle with both of them. But human development, a lot of business owners are not actually taking the time. And I say taking the time because we can't make time. So we all have the same amount of time in the day, and what we're prioritizing matters. And most, or I shouldn't say most, but a lot of business owners aren't taking the time to develop their people. And therefore, they have a lack of leadership underneath them. And therefore, they're feeling burnt out, grinding all the time, wondering why this isn't getting easier, all those different things. And it's actually, if for all of you business owners listening to this, all the good things in your life are because of you. All the bad things, conversely, are also because of you. So if you're feeling burnt out, if you're feeling that your people don't support you, that they haven't stepped up to be that next leader, like, that's actually on you. And so that's one area. And then the systems and processes area, a lot of business owners like you and I are visionary. And so we have these visionary traits. Like if you take the crystallizer assessment, which is part of rocket fuel, which is part of the EOS library, you can tell how big of a visionary you are versus how big of an integrator you are. And integrators have better abilities to be systems and processes oriented. I'm like a 98% visionary. So I create hurricanes. I might start 4 businesses like Aaron in a year and be like, okay, who's going to figure this out? Like, we're going to jump out of the plane and build a parachute on the way down. That doesn't work so well, especially as you expand and grow and want to scale and continue to build your empire. You really need solid systems and processes. And that's why I fell in love with EOS, was because I wanted to help business owners not just develop their people, but also some of them just really they're great visionaries. And they're actually, operating at maybe 20% their capacity and succeeding despite themselves. They might be making a few $1,000,000 a year in the business, but now they've hit a ceiling and they don't understand, well, we've been growing. How did we hit this ceiling? Well, you didn't implement systems and processes to help you scale and grow around the way. You've just been sheer muscling it. And you can only muscle it to a point. Some people can muscle it to $1,000,000. Some people can muscle it to 10 million. And then all of a sudden they hit that ceiling because either they didn't build the leadership bench underneath them, or they didn't build the systems and processes, or sometimes both. So those are the two main areas. And then there's probably 156 issues underneath that we could talk about.
That sounds about right. I would second that. Like I look back at our businesses and like the one that's been around the longest, right? To call it like our mothership, that we're kind of breaking off these sectors and merging or creating these other entities. Well, we were able to do some good things and find some success, but it really did get bottlenecked at about a couple different times. It went in loops for us, right? But specifically on like our second loop, it was harder to overcome. Like it was really a 3-year process almost of overcoming some of the things that we had put in place. And it was like our own doing, right? And what did it come down to? Not enough development, and need to tighten up processes or shift some operational modeling, which I think kind of ties into the processes, right? So what you just said was definitely true in our business. And I think you've probably seen this, like that again, this would be another thing. It's not like you fix that once necessarily and there's never anything to do again. This is like a continually evaluated thing. You kind of, anytime you hit a wall, this should be being assessed on what needs to shift within that. From my point of view, I don't know if you agree with that or not.
100% agree, because like as you said perfectly, there is, you may figure these systems out for this level, but then the next level you get to, there's different systems and processes you got to learn and grow to, or you may have to let go of the vine, if you will. I was working with a great company yesterday. They're actually the number one Porsche racing team on the planet, and they build custom project cars and all this different stuff. They just brought in a president. The visionary is like, I suck at this integrator stuff. We're starting to go down this EOS path, and realize that I have limitations and I'm limiting the organization. They brought in a great president. I just got to meet him yesterday. I was like, I told the visionary afterwards, I was like, great hire, great decision. I was like, I don't know what you're paying him, but it's worth it. And so you realize that, hey, I need to eat some humble pie and figure out who can help take it to the next level. Like, this person has private equity experience. They came from Harley Davidson and ran their marketing, like back when there was actually good, by the way. But so
they need them back.
They probably do need them back, but the CEO looks a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, so I don't know if that'll happen. But so the point is that you get to this level and you have stuff figured out and things are going well, and all of a sudden you hit that ceiling again. And by the way, that ceiling doesn't just come as a company. It can be departmentally, it could be individually, it can be in your personal life. Like, there's all different ceilings that we hit and we grow to. It's very analogous to, because you and I are both into fitness. Like, we can hit plateaus with our health and fitness, and then we got to change up the regimen, be it diet or exercise, to be able to break through that next level. And so these ceilings happen at all levels of our life, and we just got to be cognizant enough, spend enough either quiet time or, getting out of the business to work on the business, or getting some quiet time to work on ourselves, to figure out what are these ceilings that I'm hitting, where are my limitations, and where do I need help to break through.
It's really well said. And I think that, it's like, anything you see about like, business is going to be easy, or like, we did this in 6 weeks or 6 months, like, it's just complete BS. Like, I guess maybe to some level you could find some quick success, but you'll probably find some quick failures coming, behind that. I think you see that in a lot of those instances. But the reason, in my opinion, this stuff gets so complex as you're growing is because anytime that you add people to something, the more people you add, the more complex it gets. So keep it as simple as possible, right? Because the complexity is going to come with any type of scale. But there's so many factors into that. It could be like an overarching strategy, or, systems and processes. It could be one business unit or area. It could be an individual on a team or in an area. It could be on the work side. It could be on the personal side. It could be, fitness related. It could be relationship related. There's so many different dynamics at play, and it's ever evolving. It's like that's why it's like, there's not just like one way to do something, and there's not just one diagnosis. You really got to like assess the situation as it is, and be like constantly open to like evaluating and working on these different things, because it's going to shift.
Yeah. And the people piece that you mentioned there, I think this might be epiphany for some people. We're the most divinely and uniquely and complex organisms ever created by God. Yeah. So why would we expect the people that we bring into our organization to be easy to deal with? Like, we are confusing. We are complex. We do bring issues with us. Like, why would we expect that to be easy? So our good friend, mutual friend, Stefan, always says, those who care more win more. That's one of his favorite quotes. And I love that about him, because he's a great leader. And he was just on, wasn't he?
He was just on, and that was one of his main one-liners for the episode. And
well, it's a great reminder, because you're right, he is right. And the point there, to tie in what I was just saying, is you really have to care about your people and understand what gets them motivated, what makes them tick, what issues they may have going on in their life that's affecting their professional life. Because if you do that, then they're going to want to fight for you and actually be less complex organisms than God created them to be, because they're going to overcome their complexity by caring about the mission, by caring about you, the leader, by caring about the bigger cause or dream or vision that you are casting out there for them. But if you don't do that, if you don't spend the time, if you don't care more, they're not going to do that, and they're just going to be seen as thorns in your side.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, people are going to be more like someone can talk a big game, right? They can be charismatic, they can draw people in. But in a business setting, if that's inauthentic, people are going to figure it out relatively quick. And so, man, one of the things that I think, not from a strategic standpoint, just to me, it's more like just doing the right thing. But like every single decision as best you can should be what's best for the company, but then like what's also best for those individuals like involved. And like a lot of times that means it may not be best for you personally as the leader. Now, I think there's nuance to that. You shouldn't do things that disrupt the company potentially being able to stay in existence or, continue to move forward. But, one of the main things I look at, like with inflation, in general, but like specifically the last couple of years, what's happened with inflation is how are we doing? And I look at this weekly. So it's not like a once a quarter or once a year, but weekly I'm looking at our organizations and like, what are we doing on year-to-date comp? Like, where's our people at? And yes, like we're in a performance-driven role, so like they have a lot to do with that. But like one of the things I was proudest about last year is that 96% of the team was up over an 8% annual increase, and a lot of people were much higher than that, right? But I'm like, okay, like we are not nailing this on the head, not everyone's up 100%, right? But like we're fighting what's going on, we're doing, and so that's like at the focal point. And so, but there's all these little micro situations like, man, like how do I use that person's unique gifts? Like, how do I get them in their swim lane? How do I empower them? How do I encourage them that they can do this? Like, how do we craft things so that the people here can earn more income? How do we make it as entrepreneurial as possible, even in operational roles? And I like to think I obsess over that, but the reason I'm obsessing over that comes back to like, I know that we need to progress people for them to be able to fight what's going on with inflation from a monetary standpoint. So
yeah, and you're creating that environment for them to win, whatever their version of winning is.
Correct. So if you're okay with it, I want to switch it up a little bit here. So Josh and I met about 2.5 years ago through our Arate syndicate, which is a great group. I'm still involved. Josh is still involved. It's a great group of people. We just had an episode released this week that talked about, masterminds and networking and some of the great things about it, and then some of the pitfalls that you see within it too. And I was doing my prep as I was listening to that again. I was listening back yesterday as it was released, and I was doing my prep for us to talk today. And, I'm proud of the fact that our relationship's going on, 2.5 years, and I want it to continue, and, hope we're doing this again in another 2 decades, right? We're both,
That's right.
both healthy, Lord willing, we'll stay healthy. I think we've even talked before about like, hey, like, a decade from now, we want to be having a bourbon together, smoking a cigar or something. So it's like, I've been doing recruiting and staffing for 17 years. And what becomes more and more important to me is the long-term relationship with people. And you're in some of these groups, and what I see is a mix in these groups. You got people that are wired that way on building like long-term partnerships, long-term relation, even if it's just a friendship, not even a partnership. And then you'll see really transactional stuff happen where people like come, they're up in your face, they're buddy with you, and then they're just like gone. or they 180 on you. And I think it's a place that people that go into these groups need to be careful with, like really careful with. That's my opinion. I'm really interested to hear yours. I'd just like to hear your opinion on that, and just those transactional relationships versus long-term relationships in the context of kind of going into these groups.
Well, I would say I think that most everyone should have a group because there's so much power. Now, whether that's a free group that you create with a bunch of like-minded local people, or you join an RTA syndicate, or I host a couple masterminds as well. And the reason I did it was I saw an opportunity there were some people that couldn't afford EOS. There's some people that couldn't afford, or I should say, couldn't afford and weren't ready for it. Couldn't afford me one-on-one. And I wanted to create an environment that I could still have an influence and impact over people, no matter what that was. So mine is far more teaching and community-based. I know some businesses probably come of that amongst the group, but they know when they join my group, whether it's the entrepreneur one or the financial advisor one, specifically, that it's a community-based, we're all growing together and helping each other win. And so when you go into these groups, there's going to be some predators out there. I got hit up on a DM this morning from a marketing strategist that connected with Facebook because she was connected to a bunch of RTA people. So I don't know if she's in RTA or not, but like immediately went into sales pitch. And I'm just like, look, I got a marketing guy. Thank you. And also I teach sales and recruiting, and you've been around it so long as well, as like, if your sales pitch is weak and you haven't taken the time to ask me questions or get anything from me, like I almost want to go into coaching mode, like right away. Like, hey, I teach this for a living. Your pitch is shit. Like, you want to get coached by me to help you with this? But I think that, you go into the groups.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, you go into these groups with the intent to learn and build relationships. And through those relationships, if you happen to do business with each other, like Aaron and I have done, like you do that through the lens of, hey, what is potentially a win-win together? Or, hey, I see an opportunity for us to win together. And versus you going into what's in it for me, right? Yeah. So I went into RTA, actually it was the month before my termination. And I didn't go into it with the intent to network or get any business from me, because at the time I was recruiting advisors for the Wisconsin and Northern Illinois area. I didn't even know if there was anyone in that area that would be of value. I went in to learn from Ed and Andy and build some relationships with people outside of my worldview at that time that could potentially impact me and help me become a better leader. That was my intent going in. So intent really matters. Like if you're going in with the intent to get business from a group, like you're going to get sniffed out right away. You're going to piss people off. And you won't get out of it what you want out of it because you went in with the wrong intent. You're looking for short-term transactions versus playing the long game. Like some of my best friendships have happened over the last 3 years through RTA. Some of you guys, including you, Aaron, like have been there with me and for me, whereas some of the people that were in my life when I was at the mountaintop bailed on me. Yeah. Right. So like, I think that's an important thing about friendships and relationships too, is like, they don't have to be there for the longest time. It's not like your childhood friend is going to be your best friend forever. Sometimes that happens and that's really cool, but it's the people that are there for you and support you and want you to win and help you become a better person. And that can be in a 6-month time frame. And those blossom into some of your best friendships. But everyone comes into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And it's just really incumbent upon us to determine which relationship that is. Was it for a reason? Because that reason might be like the guy that I recruited that ended up suing me. Like, he taught me a lot of lessons. And he was in my life for a season. But he'll never be in my life again. And he made that choice, not me. Right. And then there's people that I've known just a short duration of time that have become really supportive and really helpful and trying to add value to my life without asking for anything in return.
So I kind of hear this, and, this is something that I'm pretty intentional about because, one thing's for certain, when you're trying to build something, you got this big, massive mission. Like, people are going to disappoint you. That's going to be a part of it. You know, you're going to get betrayed. Like, things are going to happen. But I've really had to adopt the mindset, and God's worked with me on this a lot over the last couple of years. And I'm glad he has, because I've been tested on it again since. But I'm not staying bitter towards people, forgiving them. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that they have to be in proximity or in this like circle of what, like I can forgive them. I can wish the best for them. I can encourage them, but do it at somewhat of an arm's length. Like, they don't have to be like forgiven and brought back into everything. Just what are your thoughts on that? I mean, you went through this situation, and I'm kind of hearing it in what you said. You said, I learned something. Like, I'm hearing that you say, like, there was something that, yes, that something was taken from you, but something was also given, and you learned something for the long term within that situation.
Yeah, so real briefly, for those that didn't hear the talk on mental toughness, I had an advisor that sued me for discrimination. So that was part of the betrayal and hurt, because I didn't discriminate against this person, but yet now my name is being tossed out there as a racist. And so that was a lot to overcome for both my wife and I, and the betrayal, because this was a person that sat at our kitchen table with our family and had dinner. It's a person that I gave $10,000 worth of custom suits out of my closet to. It's a person that I taught everything that I know and poured into weekly. Like, it was a hard thing to get over. And what I found with that is that I actually was doing a better job of forgiving him and having empathy for him than I was myself. And so when you talked about that, I pulled up my phone quick, because I just wrote this quote down, or typed this quote into my notes section this weekend. Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously.
Yeah.
And I think that's super profound, because when we create a boundary, like my boundary with that person now is like, hey, I forgive you. I'm not going to let you live rent-free in my head. Even when I was going through deposition and I'm sitting across the table from him and he's lying through his teeth to the attorneys on record and saying all these things about me, and things that didn't happen, or that something happened to him that I got blamed for, like all these things. Like, I was wearing my Whoop that day, Aaron, and my typical daily strain from my Whoop is about 6-7% with a weights workout. My strain not working out that day, because it was a 9-hour deposition, was 16. Just from sitting there in the chair.
I believe it.
And so, so my forgiveness, like God calls us to forgive. We know that it's harder to do and implement, not holding any bitterness. Like, at this point, I've actually thought about this. He moved to the community I live in. Like, my wife's run into his wife at times. Like, I haven't personally run into him face to face at this point, but I know there's probably a day I will. And if I ran into him now, I'd thank him.
Yeah.
Because my life is actually better now than it was then. As hard as it was to go through that, I would thank him. And he would probably take that a really different way, right? And it doesn't matter how he would take it. It matters how I react and how I think. So there's another example I'll give, because it may be a little bit better for your audience. My one of my top advisors, who became a really good friend, his mom was an alcoholic growing up. He and his twin brother have dyslexia. They, were in learning disabilities classes. They rode the short bus. Had a lot of shame around that. But his mom, being the alcoholic in their childhood, preyed on his emotions a lot. So he shut his emotions down to protect himself. And in doing so, then as he became really successful, she started to resurface and come back. And he set a boundary with her and said, Mom, we're going to not talk for the next 6 months. And I don't remember exactly what the boundaries are, but when you set a boundary with someone that's narcissistic or doesn't have control over their own being or providence, their job is to smash boundaries. Like, that's what they're going to test you at all times, to the point where she came into the office during a work day and the front office, my first director of first impressions, she stopped her, said, "Hey," because we had told her the situation, and Mama walked right back and tried to get to his office, and I had to escort her out. And as kindly as I could, because this is, a 60-year-old woman, I'm not trying to like muscle her out, but like he was very firm in his boundary. And what's so cool about his boundaries that he set with her, because he wanted to love his mom, but not at what she wanted, right? He was willing to do so, like he wanted to have a great relationship with her, but not at the expense of his own life and his own emotions. And what's so awesome about this is she got herself clean. And now they have an amazing relationship. She DMs me, I talk to her. Now that advisor has a beautiful little 2-year-old, and his grandma is now in her life. Like, but that wouldn't have come, and she may have not gotten herself clean had he not set those boundaries.
That's a great story that I will go into them just for the sake of time, right? But I found that where I do that, it sets up what that future relationship could be like, for success, right? Compared to just completely like it might never even happen,
Yeah.
Man, I tell you what, just from experience, and I think we've gone back and forth a little bit, or maybe even when you were going through some of that legal deposition stuff, I think we had a conversation on this, because I've been in one of those 10, 12-hour depositions, and you want to talk about something broken, the legal system is broken, and what goes on in those depositions, it's really upsetting. But it teaches you a lot too about yourself and your mental toughness. And I have a similar situation in that before we started Spark, different, but similar in that before we started Spark, I had another staffing business, and we ended up in one of those long depositions, and it was a really tough thing, and really hard to not be bitter about how some of that, went down, even after the fact, on, having to pay some of my buyout back because of a sentence or two in a legal agreement, because I was at a disadvantage in that, like, my ex-partner was keeping the other company and I was starting something brand new. And we both know people don't love change,
Yep.
clients' businesses. So we were at a major disadvantage with that. And then I had to pay back a portion of my buyout that I even got, which was a low amount or what it should have been in general. Well, these were my choices to do that. And I learned from that. But, you fast forward to now, and it's like, I don't talk to that person. And I think that's probably the right thing. But I don't hold any ill will, towards them. I wish them the best. They're going to run their business the way they see fit. We're running ours the way we see fit. And, the growth and the blessings that, God's, put in our life, like, if I saw that person, I would thank them, and I would do it in a genuine way. I'm sure they would spin it to me not being genuine, but legitimately, like, that's the same approach that I would take, because, man, I bet so many things that have come together, over the last, 10, 11 years. Like, I don't think I would be married to my wife. I wouldn't have my kids. I don't think we'd have all these great, things that we have going on at these companies had I not made that decision to step away. So I'm grateful for it, even though it's probably one of the hardest things that I've ever had to go through. And there's still frustrating parts about that to this day. That's like, man, like, because you don't like when people make up lies about you. Like, that's hard to deal with.
It's hard. And speaking of the legal system, I'm sitting there going to my attorney, like, I can't countersue for defamation or slander. He's literally lying. And they go, well, it has to be outside the bounds of the case. I was like, what do you mean? It is the case. He's lying. And we have proof of it. Like, it's so odd. But yeah, so one of our great mentors, Ed Milet, always says life happens for us, not to us. And both you and I, just through these examples, are great examples of that.
Yeah. Okay, so last question for you. You, ever since I've known you, you take care of yourself physically. I think you're on another level right now with that. There's a lot going on in the world. I'm sure as you're talking to business teams and leaders, like this is coming up right now. But what's your advice to people on how to control what they can control right now with everything going on in the United States and the world in general?
That's a great question. In fact, it actually came up yesterday with that great leadership team because the visionaries are traveling a lot with their race team and not able to take care of their health as much as they'd like. And so there's a reason that when we hop on an airplane, every single time, the flight attendants say, put your oxygen mask on in case of emergency before assisting others. And that's because we can't help them if we're passed out. We can't help others if we're dead. So we have to be, and then you take that a little step further. The reason that I'm in as optimal condition as I possibly can be right now is my goal is to be the best hour of someone's day. So like my intention coming into this podcast with Aaron is to be the best hour of his day. Right now, whether or not that turns out to be the case, that's on, the receiving end. I can't control that, but I can control how I show up and try and be the best hour of someone's day. And I can't do that if I'm hungover, if I'm groggy because I had a couple drinks last night. So like I've had less than 10 bourbons this year entirely. And I'm not giving up drinking entirely. I did, after 75 hard earlier this year, I did contemplate it. And I would still want to be able to celebrate those big wins or because I've never had a problem with alcohol. So it's not like I was forced to make a choice like that. It's just one of those things where I don't see it having the value, and I can't show up to be the best version of myself for those that I coach, those that I lead in my companies, and for my family. So it's just something that I'm choosing to put on the back burner more and sparingly do it so that I can show up and be the best hour of someone's day. So if I'm recording a podcast with you or if I'm recording one of my own, I don't want it to be the best one ever. If I'm having a one-on-one coaching meeting, I want to be the best hour of their day. When I get home at night, I want it to be the highlight of my kid's day, right? So like if we go in with that intent, if we keep ourselves optimally healthy with the food that we put in our mouths, not drinking, not smoking weed, like stuff of that nature, which I don't have anything against any of those things. And I'll partake sparingly. But like the point is that we got to be cognizant of what's happening tomorrow. What intent do we have with our families? What intent do we have with our employees? What intent do we have with our customers? And if we're trying to provide the best service, we got to show up physically healthy, mentally healthy, emotionally and spiritually healthy. And I steer away from peak performance because usually you only get there sparingly. So I like the optimal performance methodology more. It's like, what's my optimal range? Like right now, like through the summer was to try and put on muscle, but stay below 10%. So actually add weight, but stay below 10% body fat. And so it's like, in being able to treat myself, like usually when I'm locked in 75 hard, like no sugars, clean as can be. And, my kids had a little pool party on Friday. And, so I ate healthy, ate the meats, and then I had a cookie, right? So like I'm still treating myself because I'm putting in the work to be able to do that and remaining in optimal performance as much as possible. But I think the first step is being cognizant of it. The second step is then making the time and making it a priority versus, if I get to it type of thing.
Well, that being the key, you gotta, I mean, if I were to sum up in one statement what we talked about today, it's like whatever area that you're focusing in, you need to be intentional. Put intention into it. All right, man. Well, it's great having you on today. I really enjoyed the conversation. I would ask the audience that if you got anything from this, which if you listened, you did, please share this with at least one other person. We'd appreciate that. Josh, anything that you want to leave the audience with?
Man, my methodology in beating the drum of is be intentional about being the best hour of someone's day. Like if we as a society forget all the political noise, the geopolitical noise, forget the economy, forget all that for just a moment. If you're taking Aaron's advice to control what you can control the intention to be the best hour of someone's day. And if we truly took every chance to have an interaction with the intent that we're going to be the best 5 minutes, the best 15 minutes, the best hour of their day, the world would change.
It's a great frame for us to go into any situation with. So I can't end it on a better note. So have a great day, all. Josh. Thank you for being on. And I guess I will say one more thing. You got an event coming up with some of the guys from Arte, and I just want to give you my blessings on that. I hope you have a great time with everyone. And it's Five Bridges Farm, right? That's your guys' farm.
Yeah. So the farm, if anyone ever wants to host an event, one of the things that we did beyond my coaching is buy this 80-acre estate where we host weddings, bourbon tastings, leadership events, all the different stuff. It's Five Bridges, spelled out fivebridgesfarm.com. Would love to host you. I got this land to share. I did not get it for just my family. It'll be part of the legacy, but we want everyone here to unplug from the computer screens, get out from underneath the fluorescent lights, and be able to work in on them to make themselves better so they can go back to their families, back to their businesses as better human beings.
All right. Well, thanks. I'm glad we got that in there because the place is beautiful, and you guys should absolutely check that out. I know we have a couple people out of Wisconsin, and you and I haven't talked about this, but we do most of our events here in Detroit where we get all the operators together and stuff. But if we do one out of state, this is an area that we're going to be looking at doing a leadership event at. So more to come on that. Maybe we'll even record something from out there.
We record right here in the studio, so it'd be awesome. You're welcome anytime.
All right, brother. Have a great day and a great event coming up. Thanks.